even though I was doing early on, I was doing good. It was just that first exam just screwed me over, and even if I was gonna bounce back through the test, it was not gonna bring the grade up, and plus there was no repeats. He was helpful, but not in the way that I needed the help. You know what I'm saying?
I think my least favorite class was accounting. That really put a huge dent in my GPA. Honestly, a lot of math classes did, but I feel like accounting was the hardest one for me because no matter how many times I try to go to the professor for help and all that stuff, it's like it never really worked out for me.
Yeah.
So
I was the same way. One of my hardest class was this mass comm theory class. It was really hard. I still don't know if I'm gonna pass. So I'm waiting to hear back what I got on my final paper, which was worth 35% of my grade. But yeah, it was a very hard class, very stressful, and I will be very sad if I have to retake it again.
yeah.
Time out.
And even then, it's like depending on your professor, they probably just don't care.
Yeah.
Just as long as you get there.
Yeah, right. That's how my mentality is.
And plus, to make it there to class, it was another idea, like to get the shuttle, match the shuttle timing. Yeah, one of the shuttle members, he's one of my friends now. He told me that don't listen to like the time. If it says like 5 minutes, just watch where the red dot goes. If it's close near, just go outside and get on that because it'll be there because the times are always wrong.
Yes, they are always wrong. I did realize that the couple times.
Well, I started at Eastern in 1999 as the Burr Hall director, actually. When I was first hired, I worked in Burr for 2 years. So that has relatively little to do with why it's my favorite, but it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt, I mean. Burr Hall just has a lot of history. It's the architecture in the building. It doesn't look like your traditional residence hall, like Burnap Crandall, even, the upper level halls, like Nutmeg and Laurel. There's just a lot more character in the building itself. So that has the most to do with it. It just doesn't look like a regular institutionalized building that you would expect to live in on a college campus.
The name Burr Hall came from it's named after the university's third principal, who was Henry T. Burr. So that's where the name came from. Burr Hall opened in September of 1921, and it was the first dormitory on campus. And there was attempt to get money to do it in 1907, but that failed. And then in 1917, the plans finally went through, and they received money from the legislature to build the building. There was a delay with World War I, so they were not able to start till 1919, and then the building opened in 1921. And like I said, it was the first dormitory on campus, so it was pretty exciting for the campus and to expand it. He really guided the school through growth, and he wanted to see expansion. That was one of the things that he wanted to see, it get bigger for the community and for the students. He was a lot of the literature says he was a vigorous proponent. He really, really pushed hard to try to get the school to be residential and to have a dorm on it. That was one of his major focuses. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. He was the principal from 1904 to 1918. So unfortunately, building it and having the building be there when he was the principal didn't happen. But it was only 3 years after, and it did come to fruition, and they were able to get the money, and they built the first dormitory, which was his goal. So the university, the school at the time came pretty close, little short to do it when he was here, but he did see it. He was able to see all his work come to fruition.
So based on what I've been able to figure out from the alumni Facebook page, there were 4 students that lived in each room at one point, and I would guess that was many, many years ago. It was the first residence hall on Eastern's campus. It's one of the main original buildings. When I started in 1999, it was an all-women's residence hall, and it was 3 students per room. It morphed into being a co-ed hall It started, I think it was around 2006 that we had the last class of all women that lived in the building. It became co-ed after that, and it also dropped from 3 people per room down to 2 students per room. Burr Hall has consistently been used the past 25 years that I've been here, but in the spring of 2021, during the pandemic, we did move the students to other first-year spaces that were available on campus because we needed to set aside some residence hall spaces for quarantine and isolation purposes should a student become infected with COVID and not have the ability to go home. So it was consistently used. We did just open Burr Hall back up this current fall. We had a class of somewhere around 35 students assigned to Burr. They moved into Burr Hall during Warrior Welcome. And then the day before classes started, there was an unfortunate incident where an underground sewage pipe burst. So originally we just knew that there was a sewage issue in Burr in the morning, and facilities worked all day to fix it. And then after doing some research into what was causing the problem, they determined that an underground sewage pipe had actually burst outside of Burr underground. So at that point, we certainly knew that we couldn't have 35 students living in the building. So we had to quickly shift students up to Winthrop, which wasn't actually going to be used this year. So thankfully we had some spaces to move those students to, but we did plan to use Burr this year, and we certainly do plan to use it next year once the repairs to the pipes have been made. We will be using Burr next fall. With any building, whether it's a residence hall or an academic building, you do still have to maintain those spaces. If it was closed for 2 years and we didn't have it cleaned and we didn't make sure that it was heated in the winter and so on, the building would fall into a state of disrepair, and then when we'd get to the point where we would need to use Burr again, we'd have to do a lot of work to get it ready for students. So we do maintain the buildings even if they're not being used, and the perfect example of that was with the pipe breaking at Burr this year. Winthrop was ready to be used for residence hall students. We had to quickly get some cleaning done in it because, again, it wasn't intended to use this fall, so facilities didn't put the care into the building as they would have had it welcomed a first-year class to move into it, but we maintained it. It was still in good shape, so when we had to really quickly pivot on that day before classes and get 35 students moved from Burr into Winthrop, we were able to easily do that.
Do you plan on doing a master's or?
Maybe in the future, but not in the near future.
Nah, I'm just gonna get my bachelor's and I'm out. That's gonna be doing it.
Yeah. The phone's ringing.
You'll get it.
Unless we could be calling this late on the weekend or something.
Hello?
Trudy the Ghost is a name that comes from what we really call as a university legend about a student name. Her name was Gertrude, or Trudy as her nickname, L. Beer. And Trudy was a student here when it was Willimantic State Teachers College, and she lived in Burr Hall. She was scheduled to graduate June of 1940. She was going to finish her program, that after the spring semester. But unfortunately, on January 25th of 1940, so her last year in school, Trudy lost her life because she fell from the 3rd floor of Burr Hall. She fell out the window and she passed. Her injuries were so severe that she passed. And the president at the time made a statement that she fell or jumped from the 3rd-story window to the concrete. And that happened just before 7 a.m. on January 25th. And at 2:55 that same day at the Wyndham Community Memorial Hospital, now the Wyndham Hospital that we have now, they did pronounce her that she had passed at 2:55 that afternoon. So it was a tragedy. There's a lot in our collection. If you're ever interested, you can go through there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of firsthand accounts of some of the students that were there at the time. There's a lot of different stories about why she might have fallen. As the president said, she fell or jumped. There's some speculation about whether, she jumped, that she may have wanted to commit suicide. There's speculation that she was sleepwalking, and she really didn't completely know. She wasn't about herself on that evening. There's a lot of different articles with, thoughts and theories, which really lends to our, Trudy the Ghost legend here at Eastern.
The piano in Burr, I believe, came from Schaefer. Prior to Schaefer being renovated as a residence hall, it was the fine arts building on campus, and it had, piano practicing and recital rooms in it. So I believe we were fortunate enough when a new piano was received for one of the rooms in Schaefer. I believe we got the piano for housing, and it was probably easiest just to move it right next door to Burr Hall. So there are students every year who love that the piano's there. Certainly students who know how to play the piano and students who don't know how to play the piano would use it. So we certainly make sure that we keep it tuned and get it tuned periodically so that if the students want to play the piano, they're playing a piano that works well. It is the intent that once they repair the underground pipe breakage, that we will use Burr Hall next year.
I've worked for the state for over 30 years now, and I've worked in higher education, and as much as there have been struggles, we always seem to move forward and to progress. So I think Burr Hall will be around a long time.
Yeah, we do certainly hope to use it again next fall, and as we plan for the next academic year, we're definitely planning to use it.